Good afternoon. My name is Ed Sachs, and I am the president of my collaborative team. And welcome to our weekly CollaborEAT Live series, a 15-minute video conversation with our members and guests on very interesting collaborative topics. Whether you join us live or watch us on your own free time, you can count on our weekly CollaborEAT Live to provide you with thought-provoking conversation and educational information about the collaborative process. I'm excited today to have with me Julia Kramer. Julia is a financial professional and a graduate of one of the first financial psychology graduate certification programs in the country. Using the latest research from the emerging field of financial psychology, traditional coaching techniques, her financial expertise, and big dose of humor and understanding, Julia works with her clients to reduce their shame, fear, and guilt around their personal finances so they can find their own unique path to financial peace and health. Julia, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell me, what is... Those phones always get
So now we have
no
the first glitch. My apologies. So, yeah.
Tell me a little bit, what is financial psychology?
So financial psychology is actually the intersection of finances, personal finance, and psychology. About 18 years ago, 12 years ago, the Financial Therapy Association was formed, and I found it right around the time that it started. And it's a group of accountants, CFPs, therapists, and academics who all realized that being good with money had very little to do with our education, our intelligence, and our discipline. It's really based on money scripts. So subconscious beliefs formed in childhood, usually partial truths, and some of them don't serve us. And because people will never talk about money, right? Like they'll tell you about any addiction they have, right? Or any other problems, but they will not tell you about their financial fears or credit card debt. And I'm going to be honest, I started studying it because my husband's a CPA, I'm a CPA. We both have math brains. And as we got some disposable income and started accumulating some money, that's when we started fighting about it. And so I started the study to prove he was a jerk and I was right. And it turns out we're both jerks and we're both right. So it's been great fun, and it really fits in well with the collaborative process.
Tell us how.
So, and if I could just back up and say that you did a financial neutral webinar that was amazing. I signed in, I was tired, I'd come off a family crisis, and I'm so glad I did. So I want to thank you for that. Because most people, right, especially if we're good with money, and many financial professionals are, we just assume that the people who aren't good with money, so for example, don't know how to budget, don't have a budget, have no idea, we tend to assume kind of negative things about them, right? As opposed to understanding, and this blew my mind, only 13% of us are hardwired to save money.
That's amazing.
So the other 87% of us feel terrible because we're not that 13%. And it's not that you don't have to save money. It's that people who aren't wired for it have to work a little harder to save money. So around the collaborative table, I encourage the professionals that I work with to think about, what if you walked into a room with someone from whom, you're separating. So someone you once loved and now it's not working out. And there's a lawyer and a financial neutral and a divorce coach or a mental health professional. And you have to say, this is my net worth. This is what I spend on clothes. This is my credit card debt, right? And then we expect them at the worst possible time to know all of this and feel safe talking to us.
Yeah, that is always the challenge here. So how does financial psychology help us with that?
Well, so one, just being aware, right? Two, understanding. So there's four basic money scripts. So there's money avoidance, right? Which tend to be a lot of the people who think money's bad. And so, for example, if you have someone who is the lesser earner, and a lot of times people like teachers, social workers, therapists have taken this subconscious vow of poverty, right? So there's something wrong with money, and it's very hard for them to ask for what they want or need because they don't want to be seen as greedy. So they have this story in their mind: one, I shouldn't have to talk about it; two, if I do, I'm bad and greedy, right? And like I said, these are subconscious beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you have the money status person, and so the money status person equates their sense of self with what they have. So saying to that person that you have to reduce your spending and move out of the neighborhood is literally saying you need to amputate a part of your identity. So understanding the impact to someone like that, as it makes us so to someone who is a money status person, having those budget conversations, when I do that, I try to be much slower, much less judgmental, much more understanding, because it's very easy to judge people, right? Like, oh, they're just so greedy,
Mm-hmm.
or oh, they just no, this is what they've somehow, gotten in their mind, that they're a better person if they have a bigger house. So how can we walk with them on that journey that you're still a good person, even if you have to downsize?
So, Julia, would you agree that the setting is best set in private meetings as opposed, in other words, before a team meeting, to make sure that you've met with the parties and you can set that stage
Yes.
depending upon where they are?
Yes. And then sharing it with that professional team. And this is where having good relationship, right? And really knowing the team is so helpful, because if I know, for example, that there's someone who's really judgmental, right? Or someone who's really money vigilant. So money vigilance tends to be those of us in the financial profession who just believe on living on less. And so we're like, why doesn't everyone? And how can they not have an emergency fund? Right. And so just pointing out to the other vigilance around the table, that's not everyone's way. So take your bias and leave it behind, right? And sit where the people are. Just making people aware of this concept, I think, brings a lot of humanity to the table.
So it sounds to me like one of the first tips is to be a good listener.
Yes. And to do some self-exploration. It's very hard for us to leave our biases outside if we don't know what they are.
And how do you suggest that professionals do that? I mean, what's the best way to do that?
And I do enjoy you. So, there are two very simple exercises that you can find online, or you can email me. I'm happy to share. One is called the money egg, and the other is called What Do You Believe? And the money egg, you basically use your non-dominant hand, draw an egg, and you use the non-dominant hand, one, because it's supposed to get both sides of your brain working together. But even if that's not true, it adds a little bit of fun and takes judgment out, because you're not going to be able to draw well, right, with your non-dominant hand.
Uh-huh.
And you start with symbols with your earliest memory related to money, and you go up to the current time, and you come up with a sentence that says, the lesson I learned about money is, and usually it's conflicting and or negative. There aren't that many of us that learned positive money messages. And two is this, what do you believe, which is 31 questions that you answer as quickly as you can, because we want to get to what your subconscious believes, not the prefrontal cortex, but your true that surprises people. And the stuff that comes out is amazing. And so, for example, I know, so my biggest bias is I don't like owning a house. Like if someone told me right now that I could rent for the rest of my life, I would high five them and, give them a lifetime supply of lattes. And so when I'm sitting around the table and I see someone who can't afford the marital house, but is determined to stay in it, that's when I have to shut my mouth.
Gotcha.
Because all that does is add. I need to be more helpful and okay, how can we make it work instead of, are you freaking crazy?
And give us a couple of pointers on how to deal with those difficult clients that are really having that psychological problem with the finances and are coming to grips, whether it's even just coming to grips with the fact that their financial situation is about to dramatically change. Yes.
And a lot of times, I know for me, it's not as though we every year save up we have extra money that would fund an entire other household, just play money, right? So almost every client that's coming around the table is going to, be facing some financial changes. One is, I was separated for a year and then happily, we reconciled, but I would wake up thinking I was going to be a bag lady. So when we know that that's happening, we know that when one of our clients says to us, I'm going to be a bag lady or bag man, and we know they're not going to, trying to reason with them is wrong. Saying, yep, that's scary, let's talk about it, is the way to handle it. Two is, if they're not doing their financial homework, we tend to think of them as non-compliant clients. What they actually are somewhere along the change continuum, and they're not ready yet. So kind of understanding that and not lecturing and saying, well, tell me what it would be like, if you could do the budget, or tell me what happens when you start trying to get that information. That does a lot to validate the person's experience and move them forward.
It's very interesting on the webinar that you talked about, where we had the financial neutrals. One of the things I talked about is the big shift for financial professionals. I think you've just totally described it. The fact that we now, as forensic accountants or as financial planners, we now have to keep the parties' mental state in mind. We have to know what their biases are. That's something that most accountants aren't really used to. So how do you suggest is the best way for a financial professional to really get an understanding of the psychology behind finances?
Wow. All right. So my mentors are Brad and Ted Klontz, Klontz. They're kind of the Freuds, and I just happen to have it, and I'm going to have to tell them they owe me. This is their new book, Money Mammoth. But they also have a great book, and it's what changed my life, and it's called Mind Over Money by the Klontzes, and it just gives you the breakdown, the basics. And for me, it was one of those things where when I read it, it was like, that is the truth. And I had never thought about it before, right? But when you really think about, so for example, if someone grows up without a whole lot of money and suddenly they have money, like athletes, there's a lot of reasons why they get rid of it quickly. And usually it's not because they're stupid, right? Right. And so when you're in a divorce setting and you're seeing people around the table and they're scared and they're angry, understanding that what's coming out of their mouth isn't necessarily what they're trying to communicate, and that the money is the trigger. And I don't know about you, Ed, but I don't know why anyone would do a collaborative without a financial, because I'm the lightning rod for everyone's anger.
Right. I agree. I totally agree with you. And we add more than just the financial aspect of things. Yeah. Julia, I want to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. We're going to bring you back and let's do a full webinar together. But
I would love to. This was wonderful.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us for our CollaborEAT Live. And Julia's web address is available. Eric has put that up. And we'd like to thank you again for joining us and thank all our audience for watching us. If you would like to be on our CollaborEAT Live, feel free to email us at info@mycollaborativeteam.com or reach out to us on social media. Thank you and see you next week.